being a history major, I like to go back and study what brought, what caused things to happen. We had something called the medieval warming period from 950 to 1250. The Vikings inhabit Greenland, they're growing crops, but all of a sudden in 1300 to 1850 we fall into something called the Little Ice Age. If you look at paintings by the great painters from the 1600s and back in that era, you'll see there's some people skating on the Thames River, skating on the canals in Holland and all this kind of stuff that never freeze today. That's because we were in this little ice age. Now, here's what happens. The little ice age ended in the mid-1800s. So what's going to happen if an ice age ends? You're going to start warming up. So they take their base back to the bottom of the ice age and try to convince you, look, we've gone up 2 degrees since we were at the bottom of the temperature in just 100 years, 150 years. Look at how much we've gone up. But the problem is, I studied it, you know what? It was caused by something called the Maunder minimum. They have sunspot activity records going back to the days of Galileo and his telescope. They started recording them. And they found out that the sun's output varies over time. And when we had the little ice age, they found out we were in a period called the Maunder minimum. The sun's output of energy dropped. And now that we're warming back up towards normal temperatures, that is going back up again. Now, why do we know it's not all this carbon and stuff that's causing the climate warming? They look at other planets, and you know what they can tell? They know how warm the other planets are. Okay? They can tell the other planets are warming at the same rate the Earth is warming. Even, they look at surface temperatures. So basically, we all know that the climate crisis was a big farce. The only people that press it and the only scientists that support it are UN scientists. Now, the answer to the climate crisis is called sustainability. Okay? Sustainability is a very interesting thing to deal with because they say that you have to pass on the earth as you got it. There has to be just as many resources and as much available to the next generation as there was to yours. And this is what sustainability is based on. So they have decided that we have to create a sustainable society, right? And here's where it touches all of us. What is sustainable and what is not? And this is where studying Agenda 21, this will give you a real insight into it. I looked at sustainability, draw a line and say everything that they say is not sustainable goes over here, and everything that's sustainable goes over here, all right? If you start looking at what's not sustainable, listen to this. This golf course out here, golf courses have to go. They are not sustainable. Your single-family suburban home is not sustainable. This takes us back to the reason we had workforce housing try to be pushed through in DuPage County. It was called pack and stack. We don't want anybody moving into farmlands. We want them all moving into the urban areas. We don't want any of that land occupied. So they were going to up by a factor of probably 10 the density of population in DuPage County by the sustainability principle. That's where one area we see Agenda 21 coming in. Other things that aren't sustainable, your consumption of meats, red meats, your raising of cattle, tilling farmland. Grazing farmland is not sustainable. Roads are not sustainable. Your air-conditioned homes, if you have an air conditioning in your unit, that's not sustainable. Your use of fossil fuels is not sustainable. What you find out pretty soon is that everything that you have received in this country because we have the Constitution and our freedoms and our Christian religion and our freedom of religions, all that's not sustainable. Matter of fact, monotheism is not sustainable. Now, how do they come up with that? Very simple. They say back 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, the earth was full of people that picked berries and ate off the land, and they did not disturb or hurt Mother Earth. But along came the Bible, and along came Judaism, which led into Christianity. The Judeo-Christian ethic and religions are the reason we're having all the problem we have today, because they will quote the Bible in the Old Testament in Genesis saying, what does God tell the people to do? Be fruitful, multiply, and subdue the earth. Well, where do you think all the problem is coming from in their eyes? We're subduing the earth and we're multiplying way too fast. So our population's not sustainable, and our subduing the earth or digging minerals or growing things is not sustainable. Okay? So the sustainability issue, everything on this side that you see is not sustainable, including industrialization and production of goods and all our cars, it's all not sustainable. That's all on this side. That's everything you'd find in a free market, capitalistic society with freedom of religion, our society. If you look at what is sustainable, what you're going to find is that you are building the perfect mirror image of a Soviet city from the communist era, where there are no suburbs, there are only high-rise buildings, everybody is stacked, there's stores on the bottom, people don't have cars, people don't have meat, there's shortages of everything. That is what they consider sustainable. So you come down to it, who wrote Agenda 21? It was written and devised by communists. These people that I told you when I gave you that history, remember? Communist Party, Socialist International Party, communist. Maurice Strong, the guy that led it, was a communist. Okay? They built a communist revolution into sustainability. So what we have in America now is no longer a communist revolution with the hippies out there screaming for social justice like they did in the 60s, and we don't have Russia breathing down our necks like we did in the Cold War. Remember that? You don't have that thing. They have come up from the bottom up, and they have produced a revolution that comes into the planning of your cities, into the planning of your counties, where they want to take away private property ownership. That's not sustainable. They want to get rid of all this stuff, and they're pushing it piece by piece, little by little, into every city and every county in this country. Our county, DuPage County, is loaded with it. Most of our board members have no idea that what the staff, unelected staff, is doing and pushing in front of them, that they're rubber stamping, is Agenda 21 and is social Marxist, period. You try to talk to them about it, it's very hard, because they aren't educated with this. The problem with our county government is that all these guys, they're looking for the next step up. I'm going to county government because I want to run for the next office, which is state. So you got that problem, and a lot of them just want to collect their $50,000 a year paycheck for their couple meetings, a month, and leave. So it's very hard to get, to put a stop to this. One of the big things you can do is go in their face and protest. You walk in the boardroom with 200-300 people, you're going to get stuff stopped. And this has been effective with me. Now, before the Tea Parties existed, I had to go out in the street and drag people in. I had to go to the subdivisions, I was knocking doors, there was no organization. But I was able to get stuff knocked out doing that. With the Tea Parties, we have a much better chance of doing that because we can organize much better. I mean, I can call 6 different Tea Party leaders and say, we got to do something here, let's get something together. Now, one of the places you can press on Agenda 21 to get rid of it is the corruption. You don't get Agenda 21 in a government without bringing corruption into the government. Okay? DuPage County is loaded, lousy, full of corruption. It all comes out of economic development, and it's all because of these type of things being pushed out. But they do things that aren't right and aren't legal. And like I said, we've got multiple churches claiming persecution from the county that have lost property and money and had their leadership harassed. We've got other problems, like the rain tax under this, where if you own a church or not-for-profit, obviously you're going to be, lose your tax exempt status through the back door. So we got organizations we can reach, but we need to reach out and get active on this. I'm telling you, this thing is this close to swallowing us up. It is already so ingrained and embedded into the workings of all the city and county governments. When you hear about those people, how many hear about those people in Colorado that had their land taken? They paid $500,000 and they had to give up about 2/3 of it for $120,000. Right? That's part of Agenda 21. They want people off those lands. The guy with his cattle that had the big problem where there's a big standoff. Bundy, yeah. Listen, Bundy isn't the only one. They've gotten rid of all the other ranches are gone. They want the cattle off all that. They're already clearing all that land out there. They don't want it occupied. They're also buying the private ranches, and you know what they're doing? They're selling the water rights to the cities where they want the population concentrated. So Those ranches will never be used again to graze any cattle because there's no water rights. So these are just the type of things they're doing. How close to home does this kind of stuff get? We have, part of the Agenda 21 strategy is to use regional governments. We have 500 regional governments now in America. And what they do is they take a region, they put up a government, and the regional government, which is not elected, makes policy and sends it down to the local governments, who, because they're in agreement on these governments, they just rubber stamp it and put it through. You really lost your elected representation, okay? We have one, and you can go on the DuPage County website and pick it up, or just Google CMAP, C-M-A-P. This is the 7-county regional government around the south side of the lake here, Lake Michigan. It goes as far west as Kane County. You know, you read CMAP and it'll tell you right there, Kane County is buying the development rights from the farmers west of the developed areas. Hey, I'm going to give you $5,000 an acre for your 500 acres to buy your development rights. You can keep the farm, you can farm it, and you can sell it, but it'll never be developed into homes because they don't want any more single-family homes built. So this is one of their big pushes, and it's alive and well in our area. We belong here, this county, to the 7-county CMAP regional government. There's also a plan for bigger regions. They want 11 mega regions throughout the world. Again, regional governments take away your representative rights. You can't vote somebody in. It's like the European Union. You can vote your union reps in, but the appointed people that sit on the board for the EU make the laws and decisions, and they override everything that the local or national governments can do. So this is what they're trying to do here. And the latest thing was, okay, how about the EPA? Remember I said Obama was using the government agencies to push Agenda 21 in? What did we hear in the last week and a half? The EPA has now told those companies that build wood stoves, which is what, when people move out into the outer wilderness areas, there's no gas, there's nothing. How do you heat your house? We use wood stoves. Well, those wood stoves, now they told manufacturers they got to be 80% more efficient, which is impossible because you're burning wood. What the idea is you're not going to burn any more wood, so you're not going to live out in a wilderness area anymore. You're not going to have the cabins out there. We're going to get you off that land and make it impossible for you to live there. And this, like I say, if you study Agenda 21, you start connecting all this. You see it's all tied in. We hear it as one story here and one story there. But this is really a very large agenda they've got, and they've got every darn area you can think of targeted just to get people off of land. And they really believe that land ownership is not sustainable because you can store wealth in your land you own, and you can pass it on to generations. They don't want that. They want no private ownership of land at all. And that's why when we look at DuPage County wanting to put a rain tax in and give you a little break on that when you put this infrastructure on your property, that's exactly what they're going to do. And you think that DuPage County has not already tied people's property up? Let me tell you what they've done. About 5 years ago, they passed the BMPs, Best Management Practices. I went in and spoke in front of stormwater committee and said, don't pass this, they're going to be using that to tie people's property up. Oh, no, these are just nice little rain gardens and stuff they're encouraging people to put on. Well, people would come in to get a permit from the county. They would go in and the county would say, building department would say, you got to go to stormwater. You got to get a stormwater permit first to do your deck or your improvement. So the stormwater would say, oh, we got to have BMPs on the property. Get an engineer, design a rain garden, a bioswale or something, and put it on your property. Then when you get that done, then we'll give you can go get the building permit. So people get it done, they'd come in to get their stormwater permit so they could take it to the building department. But guess what was happening? They go to get their stormwater permit and they said, we'll give you the permit as soon as you go down to the recorder's office and record a lien in favor of the county on your property for maintenance of the BMPs. So we're now on your title. Now, within 3 or 4 months of this thing passing, I asked the head of the permitting enforcement branch of the stormwater division, how many of these do you have now that we've got these liens on? Oh, 700. So within a few months, there's 700 people that got maintenance liens on their property. The county's on your title now. When you go to, eventually, if they put the stormwater thing through and you go and get these BMPs or these bioswales and all that on your property to try to reduce your stormwater fee, guess who's going to own that property? You got to understand, they've already got a track record of doing this. Matter of fact, that church I talked about by Wheat and Bowl where they lost half their land, you'll go there and you'll see weeds growing up all over. They can't touch their own property. And you'll see little signs with frogs on them. You know what that frog means? That this property is now an easement for the county. It is now titled, we've got title rights to this. It's a conservation easement. Okay? This is going on in your own county. And I've seen what they do. This is corrupt. They're heavy-handed. You fight against them. They've gone against my church over and over and over again. Matter of fact, I will tell you, I went after these guys. My wife ran for county board in the last election. March 18th was the election day. I'm sure everybody voted, right?
Right.
March 14th was my Republican Township Organization meeting. And they wanted the 3 county candidates for county board Republican for my District 6 to come to a forum. My wife couldn't make it, so I said, hey, how about me? I'll stand in and speak for her. Sure. Well, I stood up and I told them, I said, 2 problems in the county. One is mismanagement, the other one's corruption, and then I laid it out in front of them. Man, that place went up for grabs. But do you think I got a right to speak? Remember I told you when I spoke at the county, they go after my church, right? Do you think I'd have a right to speak at a Republican organization and not have my church going after it? Oh no, 4 weeks later comes a letter from the county, man. We don't have a final inspection on your driveway for the church. Now, the driveway was put in 1992. Okay? We don't have a final inspection. We're taking your money. We're sending an inspector over. We might even go get an executive warrant against you. It was all these threats, right? Because I spoke out. So they went back after my church again. So what do? The inspector shows up. He's looking, saying, my God, this is the oldest drive I ever inspected for a new drive. So he signs off on the thing, hands it to us. I don't know why I'm out here. Well, we know why, because the head of the Economic Development Department, the guy that does the permitting and stuff, he's the one that signed off on this letter that came to us. And let me tell you what, you're looking at a permit that was issued 22 years ago. Let me tell you another thing that happens. DuPage County, when you go in to get a permit, if you're in a county area, not a city, and you go in to get a permit to put a deck, a remodel, or whatever, they pull out aerial photos going back 40 years. They look at those photos, and they'll say, oh, we see improvements over the 40 years. Hey, look here, you got a deck on that house, or you got a shed, or you got a garage. Where's your permit for that? Well, you say, well, let's say I've lived here for 7. We know this thing was here before the other owner who was here for 10 years had it. So this is probably 30 years old. Where would I get a permit? I've only lived here for 7. Well, you're in violation. You better talk about paying a permit and paying off violations, and this is what they're doing. And to say, oh, well, this is a bunch of baloney, it's not true. I had somebody get mad at me at my Republican organization meeting because I brought this up. The guy was yelling at me, how dare you talk about corruption? How dare you accuse somebody of corruption? Well, the problem was that a year and a half earlier, I was speaking to 3 or 4 people at a Republican organization meeting for our township. And one of them piped up and said, you won't believe what the county did to us. They came in and we wanted to build the deck, and they saw this 40-year-old shed on the property, and they came out after us for permit violations, et cetera, et cetera. Why don't you have a permit? Well, we just lived here for 3 years. How are we going to get a permit, right? This thing is 40 years old. Well, what did you do? Well, the person told me we decided we're just not going to do our project. We just killed it. Whatever they were going to build, they're not going to do it. Now, the funny thing was, this was the wife of the guy that was yelling at me, telling me there's no corruption. How dare I say corruption? He was a victim of it himself. This just shows you how detached people are. What's going on? You've been a victim yourself and you don't even know it. You know, this is how serious things are in the county. They are serious. And so basically, you know, as you look on your layout here, we're talking about Agenda 21. We talked about CMAP. They're looking for global governance. You're basically looking at a communist revolution inside the country being pushed by non-elected bureaucrats and rubber stamped by city councils, rubber stamped by county boards. and it's being brought in your own neighborhoods, and it's there and you don't even know it, and you're very close to losing all your property rights. The U.S. Constitution, all your constitutional rights are based on property rights. Those are gone, you lose everything, okay? And that's what they're aiming at. And it's all about a one world government. Matter of fact, remember I told you about ICLEI? You know we have 2 ICLEI cities in DuPage County? Elmhurst and Elgin pay dues to ICLEI to run their development. But the thing is, there's all kinds of cities throughout the county. Every single one of them uses ICLEI and UN Agenda 21 development practices in their towns, whether they're signed up or not. So they're doing it all. West Chicago's building no more homes. They're all going to pack and stack downtown. St. Charles, you go there, used to have a beautiful river valley, and all they're building are these huge multi-story buildings with the stores on the bottom and the condos on top. That's Agenda 21. They're getting paid. It's called public-private partnerships. The government's paying them to do that, okay? So basically, like I said, Agenda 21 is a huge subject. I tried to get you the basics of it. What I want you to remember is, one, it's a revolution for a one world government. It's a Marxist, communist, socialist style revolution coming from the bottom up. It's already in throughout the entire country, in every city, every town, every county, and it's almost got a total grip on all development and all the land. We're very close to a tipping point here. And we need to fight it. We need to fight it in DuPage County and push it back out of our county. I believe it can be done. We need to mount a major protest this summer down at the county board during one of the meetings against the corruption there, and outline it and put it right in the face of the board members to force them to have to do something. And I'm going to ask you for your help on that, because I'm going to push for a protest this summer. I don't know what the date is, but I'll get that back to you. I'm going to let you ask some questions on this in a couple minutes. I would like to, I got about 10 minutes left here till 8:30. I would like to get to that second issue I talked about, the study I did over 6 months period about a year and a half ago, to find out what in the world happened to get the U.S. into the situation we're in now, why we're even fighting this. So what I did, I went back to the Renaissance. We came out of the kind of what was called the Dark Ages, and Europe came into a period called the Renaissance. Renaissance was the introduction of Greek philosophy and humanistic thought to the West. In the church opened up to this through a man by the name of Thomas Aquinas. He brought in Greek philosophy, which was never allowed before. So humanism, something we call secular humanism, started and came into the West. The secular humanism